Welcome back. If you are just joining us, this is Daybreak on Trust Television, reaching you from the nation's capital. Now, there you have it, today in history, declaration of the Benin Kingdom. Now, on the 20th of September 1967, the Republic of Benin was formed amid the Nigerian Civil War and lasted for less than a day. Known as the then Midwest region, Benin attempted to stay neutral since it was home to both the Igbo and the non-Igbo population. However, Biafran forces occupied the Midwestern region only weeks after the beginning of the war.
Upon the appointment of Dr. Albert Okonkwo as leader of the occupied area, the non-Igbo population started protesting Biafran occupation. Soon after the declaration of the region as an independent country, Nigerian troops invaded and took over control of the state. Did you know that there was a Benin Republic in Nigeria before?
That's quite, I've not heard of it before, but I think going back in history is trying to rekindle all of this and make us aware of our history.
Yeah, and it was indeed recorded as one of the short-lived, the shortest, I would say, countries in the world for lasting just barely 24 hours and thereabout. The initial plan was, around the Civil War, and that that region of the country, then known as the Midwest region, was sort of neutral at the beginning, and as a result, it was not aligning to the Nigerian government. Neither was it part of the Biafran,
So it was dissolved?
Industry and Biafran government or country, or what you want to call it. And so that was a major thing that happened in history, but not many people know about that. Not even, some of us did history,
90% of people had lived. I've not heard of that before.
Yeah, but quite interesting, really. Quite interesting. Now we move on to the dailies on Daybreak today, and we have joining us the general editor, Daily Trust newspaper, Hamza Idris, this morning. But before that, let's go on a quick break, and then when we come back, we'll take a look at the stories making the headlines this morning on our newspapers. Please stay with us.
But in a situation where you find that they look like the same,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that.
All right, thank you for staying with us. This is Daybreak on Trust Television, reaching you from the nation's capital. In the studio is the general editor, Daily Trust newspaper, Hamza Idris. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Elia.
Welcome to the show.
How was your week?
Fine, sir.
Great to have you. Now, we'll begin with the Daily Trust newspaper, paper of all times, like I always say. And some of the stories here. The first one at the very top, just below the nameplate there, you would find state assemblies will block FIRS move to amend VAT law. Keredolu vows. You also have gunmen kill 3 policemen in Onitsha, set patrol van on fire. Then Buhari directs incorporation of NNPC Limited constitutes board. We saw that story yesterday, and that's in line with the recently signed Petroleum Industry Act by President Muhammadu Buhari. The lead story on Daily Trust newspaper, FG loses billions in ports revenue over stalled boat service contract. You also have the rider saying NPA fails to engage new firms after Intel's row. Also, at least 58 billion naira lost in 12 months. That's according to findings. You have authority has no capacity to provide service. The matter is in court. That's according to the NPA. You have on our pictorial the graphics there showing you, all the pictorial representation or graphical representation of the information there. Below that, you have 2023. North won't play second fiddle. That's according to the Northern Elders Forum. At the very bottom, students shot dead, travelers abducted in Imo. You also have the story on bandits kill 11 in Sokoto and Kebbi. What town planners should do to stop flooding in cities and towns. Those are some of the stories there of interest. We'll take a look at the lead story this morning. That story is an investigative report.
Yeah, it is, and we try to be very careful to come up with the story. It's just like what they call the SOS, like Save Our Soul. And it is also, you know, there is a subjudice part of the story because it is in court. But that notwithstanding, you know, in journalism, there is always a window for you to do something in order to bring back the attention of those that matter. Nigeria is battling to generate money. You can see we are borrowing left, right, and center to finance infrastructure, to pay salaries, to do so many other things. But here is a cash cow, the NPA. You know, most of our goods coming to Nigeria, the oil services and what have you, it's all through the ports. But there's a serious crisis there. You know, the federal government, in its wisdom, and it happens all over, you engage the services of qualified companies that will help you collect some of your revenues, because you can't do almost everything by yourself. So this specific case revolves around the both services, you understand. And Intels is an interested party. The NPA, Nigerian Ports Authority, another interested party. The Office of the Attorney General, another interested party. And then the presidency. So many elephants there. And at the end of the day, that aspect of revenue generation was somehow grounded. As
So
I said,
are you then all of the school of thought also that the seeking of borrowing, you know, by government is unjustifiable, considering the fact that we have so many avenues that could be of help?
not really. If you block some of the leakages, assuming even the United States borrow, UK borrows, you understand? Almost all countries in the world, they borrow, but what the circumstances surrounding the borrowing is what counts. You understand? So in our case, we have multiple leakages that if we block them, instead of borrowing, let's say, $1 billion, so okay, $500 million, meaning those areas that you block should be able to help you solve some of the problems. As I said, we should not go deep into it. It's just to, you know, ring the alarm so that the federal government will remember that, look, we have a contentious issue somewhere between Intels. You know, some are giving it political connotation. Some are saying, you know, there is a problem of misunderstanding between the former NPA head of the NPA, Hadiza Bala Usman, and the Minister of Transportation, Rotimi Amechi. Some are saying, no, there is a problem in the Office of the Attorney General. But the whole issue started on payment or, paying money into the TSA. The Intels was accused of not remitting the money, the revenue it is collecting on behalf of the federal government into the TSA, and then it was reprimanded, and then the company said, okay, we'll do the needful. Before you know, their tenure, the contract given to them expired, and then they also bidded to be considered again alongside other companies, and then along the line, it was removed from the preferred bidders, and then the company went to court. So a lot of politics, a lot of intrigues and all that, but our ultimate goal in Daily Trust is not to be an interested party. Our ultimate goal was to draw the attention of the president, to draw the attention of the minister that, look, you have a very potent revenue generation window, and then ego and other factors just affecting that.
So, like you said, we shouldn't go really deep. I know Intel expressed interest in it as well, but would you say these are all of the reasons why it was disqualified?
Zainab, you want to quote to someone else. You see, I don't want to call names. Yeah, but they have done it for a very long period of time, but that did not stop the federal government from pointing at some issues, and then they said, look, address these issues. So whether Intel address those issues or not, our concern is that don't throw away the baby with the bathwater. Yes.
Okay.
All right. Well, let's move on to other stories on the front page there. One of the story of interest is that where bandits killed 11 in Sokoto and Kebbi, we are also hearing that vigilantes also arrested NCDC personnel in Kogi yesterday as someone who was, supplying arms to bandits and all of that. Would like you to respond or react to that, or maybe expatiate on that story. I mean,
very sad. If you start with the Sokoto issue, you see Sokoto is grossly underreported in the banditry problem we have, especially in the northwest. Almost every day you read on happenings in Katsina, you read on happenings in Zamfara, you also read on happenings in Niger, which is part of North Central. But for Sokoto, it is just of recent. Of course, during our editorial reviews, we've been talking to our reporters that, look, concentrate on Sokoto. As I speak with you now, there are over 50,000 residents of some local government areas, including Sabon Birni, who have crossed over to the other side of Niger Republic, taking refuge there because their communities have been ravaged. So this incident of residents that have been killed, about 11 of them, is just one of many incidences that have not been reported. I remember on Saturday, we were about completing our production when our reporter from Sokoto, he called. He said some locals, out of frustration, you understand, they stormed a certain police station, burnt it, brought out some bandits that, over the night terrorized them, and then they killed them and they set the corpses ablaze. Jungle justice there.
So maybe an indication that the people or the members of the public are beginning to, lose confidence on the state to guarantee justice?
Yes, justice delayed, they say, is justice denied. And people are so agitated that they want, law enforcement agencies to do their work promptly. In many cases, you see authorities, I'm talking about the law enforcement agents, all of them, you see them parading suspects. Maybe 100 or 50 or 30 or 20 or whatever, with their arms and whatever. And that is where the story ends.
Okay. Now, you've mentioned that we don't get to hear much from that part of the country. Is there something that our security architecture is doing wrong? Or is there something wrong that we don't get to hear much?
Maybe the reporters have been compromised, or they are not interested in covering issues like that. But here, in our paper, we insist, as I said, look at what happened. Very late on Saturday, around 10:30. The paper was about going to bed when our reporter called and said, this is what happened. These youths, out of anger, because the night before, the bandits stormed that village. You understand, they killed 2 people, they carted away assorted food items from a shop, and then they went to the bush. In the morning, the youths in that village, they summoned courage, and then they went into the bush. They were able to arrest about 7 or 8. They brought them to the police station, and then later something told them that, look, why not eliminate these people, which is wrong, because people should not descend so low to take laws into their hands. Yeah. But what we are saying is that law enforcement agencies should also fast track the processes of prosecuting these people. If it is taking them to court, since you have almost all the evidence. From that report, the food items stolen, and other exhibits were recovered from the bandits, meaning there is high probability that they actually perpetrated the event of the preceding day. So they should have been taken to court, you understand. And then there are many other cases like that, right, that have not been attended to. And, I was saying, is it because the communication in Zamfara has been blocked, so we don't hear
much
things happening there at the parts of Kazana? Is that why now Sokoto is also on the spotlight? If that is the reason, then we have a serious problem.
Right. Okay. Let's move on to the next daily today. Right at the top of the Nation newspaper, we have vaccination by public servants now mandatory in Osun. We also have 400 PhD holders teaching in Oyo secondary schools. On the right, we have ex-CBN Chief Melafia taken to 3 hospitals in 2 days. We've been hearing a lot of the controversy trailing that story as well. Ararumi Lords NMPC Limited Board. And the big headline right there is private business groups on VAT status. We are confused. We also have population census likely next year. And right below there we have Afe Babalola to federal government. Nigeria needs special agriculture bank. Okay, so let's discuss the big headline there, which says private business groups on VAT status. We are confused. We have been hearing of the whole issue trailing around the federal government, but we've not really talked about the private sector. And now they are saying they are confused. How would you react to all of that?
Yes, they have to be confused because in Nigeria, sadly, we reduce almost every issue to politics instead of looking at the merits and the demerits of such issues. The VAT, we discussed it here.
Yes.
And at the beginning, almost everyone was happy of sort that it is also a wake-up call for the federal government, the 36 states of the federation and the federal capital to look inwards and then start harnessing the potentials they have. Every state in Nigeria has potentials, every state. But the problem is our politicians, deliberately, in order to confuse people, they bring politics into serious issues, like this VAT, value-added tax. You understand? It is one of the major areas that federal government generates revenue and then share it across board, so that will be our brother's keeper, as they say, and then in the spirit of federalism. But that concept of federalism has been put to test. The issue of the private sector being confused, yes, it's a valid one, because if every state now, like Lagos, they have their law, River State, they also have their law. Now, we were discussing somewhere and somebody cited an example and said, if it stands like that, You understand? The move they made, this state is not wrong in its entirety, but you have to look at the whole concept of what VAT is. Right. Yes, and then you subject yourself to legal interpretation so that at the end of the day, there will be no multiple taxes. So this is where the fear of the private sector comes in. If Lagos collect tax, maybe from the port, meaning immediately if you are importing, let's say, equipment for your TV station, or you are importing drugs for hospitals and pharmacies, you understand? If Lagos collects, then meaning if you go to Ogun State, they will also ask. If you proceed to Oyo, they will ask. If you go to Kogi, Kogi will ask. If you come to FCT will ask. So by the time you get to Maiduguri, it means
you would have paid maybe more than 10 taxes.
More than 10 taxes. Then will you even recoup the money you use in procuring the medicine? You understand? This is one. And then another person made mention that, okay, you have the headquarters of MTN, for instance, in Lagos, right? And what they do, in order to not to pay multiple taxes and in order to do things correctly, they pay under the headquarters. You understand? Under the name of the headquarters. The services we enjoy, MTN. Now, they pay one-off into the coffers of the federal government. By the time Lagos said, oh, the headquarters of MTN is domiciled in Lagos, we are going to collect it. What of you? You have your funds here. I also have mine here. Meaning FCT will also tax, Kano will tax, Kaduna will tax. So at the end of the day, how much do we pay per minute now?
Can't even say.
You see, because it's so cheap that many people don't even bother to be checking their balances now. Years ago, we don't do that. I think at the onset of these telecommunication services, you see is 15 naira, even if it is 5 seconds. Right. Even if it is 1 second, you pay 15 naira. Right. But over time, because of the competition and all that, we were able to demystify that aspect. So while I'm not dismissing the debate and conversation about tax, I want to suggest that maybe politicians, the private sector, government, the judiciary, we should look at it very well. We shouldn't allow the matter to just die like that because of politics. We should try and see the advantages and disadvantages of either allowing it as a central pool or decentralizing it.
Okay, so I think another I think we're going to be discussing about three angles on the nation, but another topic, that has grasped my attention is about population census likely next year. Presidential proclamation expected soon. It's been years since there's been any, population census. What are your thoughts about that?
It is very good because you need the data to plan. Population, look, it's not just about saying we are 205 million in Nigeria. The importance of census is it helps you know the demographics of your people, maybe children, teenagers, adults, and what have you. And it helps in planning. So it's not just about numbers. In Nigeria, we reduce population to just numbers and saying, okay, the north has 220 million population, while the south has 80 million. It is very wrong. In anything you do, you need the demographics. If you want to provide water, you need to know the demographics that, okay, in Jabi, you have, let's say, maybe 500 million people. So what volume of water do you need to pump to that area. That is if you have the water from the mother cat, what
Right.
volume. And then if it is in a village, you know the number of people. You say, okay, so village, they require like 3 boreholes for them to have water, which will help in sanitation and whatever. School enrollment also. You need to know that this is the population of people we have, so we need to have so number of primary schools so that children will be this. It's a very important thing, and we want to encourage government to pursue it vigorously and forget about the politics side of it.
All right. All right, we will need to move on because of our time. The next paper, we'll be looking at the Punch newspaper this morning. The first story there at the top says Nigeria's monthly trade in Bitcoin rises to $44 million. You can find that on page 36 of the Punch. Also, customers scam banks with fake visas, tickets for Forex. The governor of Central Bank of Nigeria has been raising alarm over that for quite a while now. North has the votes, won't accept second position in 2023. That's according to Northern Elders Forum. You have the lead story there, says VAT by states, a joke comment. Masari under fire. Akeredolu says FIRS planned amendment dead on arrival. You have also the writer saying VAT collection battle, test for Nigeria's democracy. Lagos tells Katsina governor. Also, you have free money has made states lazy. Pandef replies Masari on comment. More states will support us to kill FIRS planned amendment. You find that according to Akeredolu. And then, of course, you have below the pictorial, you would see Assembly Speaker fumes as gunmen storm Kogi church service, killed guard, kidnap ex-provost, pastor, and worshipper. Middle Belt Forum carpets Abuja hospitals over Mailafia's death. You also have Nigerian politicians in one party, says Oni, begins 7-day seclusion. Under that, below at the very bottom, you see FG may bar unvaccinated Nigerians from government facilities. NDLEA arrest pregnant woman. Fake soldier stops Canada, Australia bound drugs. Continuation of strike by doctors, contemptuous, says. Very interesting stories. Let's begin with the one that the Daily Trust newspaper led with yesterday, talking about the comment by Bello Masari on the issue of VAT. He is saying that, well, the whole conversation about VAT is a joke, that, the states advocating and, moving for the whole conversation about VAT cannot do without the other states, of the Federation, something of that nature. What's the conversation like, and why the Daily Trust decided to pick up that as the lead story?
You can see how other papers descended on Masari. It was an exclusive story by us. We interviewed him and asked him to comment on the VAT issue. You understand? So what he said is that, look, this is Nigeria, and this VAT that you are talking about cannot exist in isolation. And the example I gave earlier, that you import goods and they come through Lagos simply because there is a port in Lagos, right? Does that give Lagos the right to now say, okay, the taxes around VAT or other components of the tax, it's not just about VAT only. There are other payments that, okay, it should exclusively go to VAT, to Lagos. Will the goods be consumed in Lagos only? This is where Masari was coming from. He said maybe more than 70% or 80% or even 90% of those goods that were taxed in Lagos will not be consumed in Lagos. They are coming down north, eastern part of the country, and even the Niger Delta. So it's not just about you as the collector, simply because you are privileged to be the first point of contact with the import. Then you become the emperor. That, okay, it is mine. I have to take everything. What of the consumption component? Look at the population of Lagos. Kano, Kaduna, Port Harcourt, and all that. you understand? So this is what he was saying.
Do you see this as a pointer to why we need to make other ports in the country more viable and more active? You know, so that you have different states and maybe in certain regions, ports there where goods can actually come.
We have them. We already have them, only that we fail to make them viable. You understand? And it's not about just ports. If you now start to collect VAT from food items and cow, for instance, take cow or cattle. If you load a trailer from Potiskum, which is one of the biggest cattle market you have, and then you collect all the taxes from there. Do you know that when you come to Bauchi, the price of that cattle will increase? If you come to Plateau, the same thing. If you enter part of Nasarawa, Kogi. So before you get to Lagos, the cattle that you buy at 300,000, it will be around 1 million naira. So as I said, we need to sit and dissect some of these issues, and this is what Masari said, that we just have to look at the issue passionately, not grudgingly, so that at the end of the day it will be a win-win situation.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for that, and we've been discussing our dailies today on Jaybreak with Daily Trust General Editor. We now take a short break. When we come back, we will be starting the first segment of our discussion on the show. Stay with us.
When a situation where you find that they look like the same,
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that.
Suleiman, Aya, and Tari, all from the Sulubawa clan, with a unique wealth of culture and deep love for cattle, which truly reflects their sense of family. But over time, everything changes with no lands for grazing. Experience the incredible story of the Fulani people. Loved ones they must protect, the journey they must take.
Get latest updates on current topical issues and breaking news by downloading the Trust TV mobile app on your Android devices. Go online, click Google Play Store, search Trust TV, install the app, and get doses of unfiltered information on happenings all over the world in your pocket. Trust TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
African fabric is finding its way to the global stage. But Nigeria is losing out on big textile spenders as the local industry faces imminent extinction. Behind me is the Arewa textile mill, established in 1963 and eventually closed down in 2004. From over 180 textile mills in the 70s, only about 25 mills now operate at less than 40% capacity.
I'm an employee of Arewa Textile PLC before it closed. After a month, I was just like a madman.
In a day, a load of 4,500. The once thriving sector struggles to compete with an annual import of $4 billion.
Smuggling is the order of the day. from manufacturers, we cannot compete.
We visit the nation's textile hubs to seek answers to why the sector has failed to return to its glory days despite government's intervention. Thanks for staying with us. Now, banditry ravaging some parts of the northwest and north central had lingered for long and degenerated to a very dangerous level, with state governors in the area having no option than to ask the people to defend themselves. This is after dialogue with bandits has failed to yield the desired result. However, recent military offensive against the bandits has successfully dislodged many of these bandits from their enclaves, fleeing to neighboring states. Many commentators commended the military and called for sustained onslaught against the bandits as the only way of ending the crisis. However, a Kaduna-based Islamic scholar, Sheikh Ahmad Gumi, holds a contrary opinion. He thinks only dialogue can end banditry, having interacted personally with some of the bandits. Professor Yusuf Usman has been part of the Sheikh Gumi team that interacted with some of these bandits in the forest. He joins us to discuss this issue. Good morning, and it's good to have you join us.
Thank you. Good to be here. Thank you, Zainab.
Now, recently in your article, you highlighted some of the need for the military to actually play a part in ending banditry in the Northwest. However, you said that that's not the solution to that. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Right. So let me correct. Sheikh Gumi did not say negotiation is the only tool. Negotiation is a very vital tool of ending any crisis in this world. Good. So my recent article says, because the reason I wrote the article is that there are lots of people, hysteria about let's go to war, let's go and kill them. And I said, guys, hold on. There is a definite place for the military, but there is no military solution to banditry in Nigeria. If anybody tells you that, it's either he doesn't know what he's talking about, or he knows, but he's not honest. Let's look at the Zamfara story. This is not a conventional war. This is not conventional military. You go in the Zamfara thing, we're saying it's successful. We don't know that. You don't know that. There's no press there in the front line to tell us the truth. All we are seeing recycled images from 2014, and I wrote it in that article, of operations in the Northeast that have been advertised as those of Zamfara. And I'm glad the military took it out. What the military is doing in Zamfara, and I've said it, there is a role for the military. For me, Zamfara is near and dear because that's where I spent my secondary school. And for Sheikh Gumi, that's his ancestral home. And there's nobody in this part of the country that has not been affected by banditry. When you wage a war, you should know the enemy. You should know who you're fighting. And I'll quote the president, you should know the language they understand. We do not know the enemy, we do not know the language they understand. And throwing bombs will not solve the problem.
Okay,
But
so
if you say, just to follow up to what I asked earlier, if you say that, yes, there's a role for the military, but that's not the only solution. We have seen that there have been several dialogues and maybe declaration of amnesty for bandits and all of that in the past. It hasn't yielded any result.
Correct. Yes.
So what exactly is the way out?
Good. And the point is that because the dialogue has failed, doesn't mean you should stop dialoguing. Dialogue has failed because people have reneged on both sides. More often than not, it is the bandits. Because I will be the first one to tell you they are not an honorable part of any team. They are very dishonorable. I've seen that. Time and again, they have reneged. They're high on drugs. I've seen it live, pushing drugs. We've been to where no politician has been, no general has been. They have amassed for us in Niger State war commanders from all the 6 states. And long before us, governors have been dialoguing with them. But if the governor of Katsina is dialoguing, the governor of Zamfara is dialoguing, and the governor of Kaduna is not doing that, everybody is doing his own. There is no consistency. All northern governors, none of them, now finally they're saying, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. But before, everybody was doing his own. There is not a uniformity. There is no sense of purpose. Everybody is grandstanding, and everybody is running to the center, and the president is saying, go back and sort out your problem, when the real people they should be consulting are the traditional rulers, the clerics, the community leaders, and all the northwestern governors. Northern governors sit down and see what we can do. And at the center, what happens? Every security, you hand it to the military. No, the military is this part of solving the problem.
okay, so would you say our approach, to tackling Nigeria's security challenges is not yielding any result at all?
It's wrong. The approach is wrong, and I said it clearly. Banditry is essentially a social problem that Nigeria is increasingly militarizing. It's a social problem brought about by corruption, bad governance. End of story. And then we're doing how we solve it is throw bombs. We'll not solve it. We need to step back. Involve everybody. We know these bandits by name. We know Dogo Gide, Kachala Turji, we know Shehu Regep, and we know where they live. That is why I say we, the military and everybody, the intelligence agencies and the governors, they know where they are. You need to be strategic on what you do. How are you going to solve this problem? Do you need to take these guys out strategically? You know where they are.
Take them out. If you say take them out, how do you mean? Take them out in what sense?
Out.
Eliminate them?
Out, whatever. But out of the equation. Take the leadership out. They know where they are. So throwing bombs from afar will not solve any problem. We went to Niger State. Niger State, you can pull up the whole 5 states of the southeast and put them 2.5 times.
Okay.
So unless and until the military, unless you can have boots on the ground, that you are going to dominate all the forests in the north, you're not going to solve this problem. And we don't have that, we're honest.
Okay, I think we're going to get right back to that. After this short break, we are still discussing tackling banditry in Nigeria with Professor Usman Yusuf, member of the Sheikh Gumi Intermediary. We'll take a short break now. When we come back, the show continues. Stay with us.
topical issues and breaking news by downloading the Trust TV mobile app on your Android devices. Go online, click Google Play Store, search Trust TV, install the app, and get doses of unfiltered information on happenings all over the world in your pocket. Trust TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
Nice to see you, sir. You got a 10-year-old son, a 12-year-old son. He's a shill boy. Yeah. And how did he get to that stage? You allowed it to happen. You allowed it to fester. It's like a cancer.
It's a failure of the family, a failure of the society, and a failure of governance.
We are still going into some other hideouts to see if any apprehensions will be made tonight.
To operate within the context of the law with much respect to human rights.
You get them?
African fabric is finding its way to the global stage. But Nigeria is losing out on big textile spenders as the local industry faces imminent extinction. Behind me is the Arewa textile mill, established in 1963 and eventually closed down in 2004. From over 180 textile mills in the 70s, only about 25 mills now operate at less than 40% capacity.
I'm an employee of Arewa Textile PLC before it closed. After a month, I was just like a madman.
In a day, a load of 4,500.
The once thriving sector struggles to compete with an annual import of $4 billion.
Smuggling is the order of the day.
For manufacturers, we cannot compete.
We visit the nation's textile hubs to seek answers to why the sector has failed to return to its glory days despite government's intervention. Thank you for staying with us, and if you're just joining, it's Daybreak reaching you from Trust Television from the nation's capital in Abuja. Now, we have been discussing with Professor Yusuf Usman, who have spoken with bandits in the northwestern part of the country as a member of the Sheikh Gumi intermediary group, in that sense. And we've been discussing ways on how to end banditry in the country, and he's right here with us in the studio. So, Prof, like you were saying, there's so much about how to end banditry. A lot of experts, security experts, stakeholders have said, no, this is the way to go, this is the way to go. And none of them seem to be yielding any result. We've tried dialoguing. It hasn't yielded much results. And even the military might, using the kinetic approach, it hasn't also yielded any results. You have highlighted in one of your articles that maybe, tackling the issue of motorbikes, shutting down networks, mobile phones, and all of that could be a way forward as far as ending banditry is concerned. Would you now say that the shutting down of networks in places like Zamfara and other parts of the country is the right step to take at this moment?
Well, we are finally waking up. We're finally waking up. Go back and look at the study Because like I said, you cannot fight a war without understanding your enemy. So we don't understand our enemy, we don't know the language they understand. There is work, excellent scholarly work done by Dr. Murtala Ahmed Rufai of the University of Sokoto, recently presented. I'm a Bandit, a decade of work in Zamfara on banditry. It's a sobering read that every policy maker and military leader, they need to read. Trace back banditry in Zamfara. There are over 120 gangs in the 6 states in the north. Each of the gang has 500 AK-47. A total of 60,000 AK-47 in the hands of bandits in 6 states.
How do we know that?
No, he was there for 10 years. This is not online banditry that people write. This is real research. He's been there for 10 years. This is work. Nobody has done this. Prior to that, Professor Sadiq has done that. So this is excellent work, excellent intelligence pro bono. Somebody who has been there, who has worked with them. 120 gangs, 500, at least 500 AK-47 in each of the gangs, 60,000 AK-47s swirling around in 6 states in the hands of bandits. Over 12,000 people have been killed in Zamfara alone in 20 years, in 10 years. 50,000 people have been made IDPs. 120 villages have been displaced. Over a quarter of a million, 250 heads of cattle have been rustled in Zamfara alone in 10 years. This is an excellent research that nobody has done, that the leadership in Zamfara, in the center, and the military need to look at, and the whole world. You need to invite him to educate the world.
Is it surprising that an individual is having this information and maybe the military or our security outfits do not have
the military is not their job to do that. It's your job to educate the world as a media person, right? It's the job of this researcher to do what he did. He did that, educate the world knows. We went into the forest, we are doctors. I and Sheikh Gumi, why did we get involved? We get involved because essentially there is a vacuum. We needed to go and understand and hear this is our country, this is our state, this is our region. Everybody must be involved. We went in there to listen because Martin Luther King said, violence is the language of the unheard. And we've not been listening. We listen and they listen to us. Everybody must be involved in this. The only way forward is not over-militarizing what is essentially a social problem. The military should be way back. Up front should be the local leaders, community leaders, traditional rulers, the clerics. The politicians are the ones that brought out this mess. And it is the military that is called to clean up this mess. But the basic thing is that there needs to be better governance. There needs to be involvement of everybody in the community. Nobody in the world will come and solve this problem for us. When I see this, it just reminds me of Afghanistan. Okay. These bandits, they are as rugged as the Taliban. And they have the stomach to fight this for years. We need to understand and stop this bloodshed. They are child soldiers, 13, 14, 15-year-olds carrying big guns. It's a failure of all across the country. What I've seen is elders have lost control of their youth, from Kanuris and Boko Haram to Fulanis in banditry, to Yoruba leaders in Igboho, to Igbo leaders in Nnamdi Kanu, to South leaders with this piracy. Elders have lost control. Elders need to come in to see how we can take this. But it's a social problem. We are increasingly militarizing. We need to take care of the social problem.
Okay, I think I would like to go back to the question my colleague earlier asked about repentant bandits surrendering and saying, oh, I am no more interested in this and I want to repent. From your interaction with them, have you seen any form of remorse in these people?
Remorse for what they are doing?
Have you seen any, let me rephrase this. Have you is there any form, of repent in them? Do they show any sign of saying, okay, I'm no more going to do this. I don't want to do this anymore.
You ask people that have been kidnapped, that are still in kidnappers' dens, when they come out, they will tell you these people are not enjoying what they are doing. We went and sat down with them in the forest, and during Ramadan, Sheikh Gumi and Sultan Bello sent them Malams to preach for them throughout the whole month of Ramadan, to preach for them and bring them back to understanding. But we've lost a generation of these youths high on drug children. And you speak to Fulani elders, they will tell you the bottom is gone. Bandits, these are Fulani herders, normal. Bandits are a very tiny, tiny population. Unless everybody gets involved to redeem this lost sheep, we're in deep trouble.
But, why should government negotiate, or, well, let me not use the word negotiate, maybe I should use the word dialogue. Why should government dialogue with a people or a group of people who will not necessarily be committed to whatever has been agreed, like we have seen in the past?
Yeah, that's the frustration. And it doesn't mean because there is no agreement, it doesn't mean you will go back, because you look at what is the alternative. And I will be the first one to be hearing amnesty. That's the last thing on our list, on my radar. You don't get there until you reconcile communities, until you open channels of communication, until you bring them in, until you take out those that need to be taken out, jail those that need, prosecute those that you need, rehabilitate those that you need. You can only do that with knowledge, not brute force. You tell me, all these children that were abducted, there were over 1,188 of our school children that were abducted this year from schools. And over 200 of them are still in kidnappers' den. All those that were released, was any one of them released by brute force? No. And we still have over 200 of our children in the forest with these bandits. Nobody's talking about them. Talking about throwing bomb. Nobody's talking about these children.
So Prof, when you say social problem, it's a social problem and needs social solution. What are some of the areas that you think attention needs to be paid to?
No. So, like I said, everything is education. Go back at the genesis of what this banditry is. It's essentially, and I'll be the last person to hold forth for this criminal bandit. My relatives, Sheikh Gumi's relatives have been involved, have been affected by these bandits. You need to look at, and I've always said, problems are local, solutions are local. The problems of the Fulanis in Kidandan is different from the Fulanis in Shinkafi, different from the Fulanis everywhere. So social, simple problems, cheap. It's not like the Niger Delta amnesty that they need billions. Leadership locally need to listen to where we are. A lot of the places we go is borehole. A lot of places we go, we need access to market. A lot of places we go, our people have been profiled. We hear problems everywhere, and we come back to the city and see the governor and see the traditional rulers and interact and continue to dialogue. Because things are not working doesn't mean you should stop.
So, one will say that the people at the receiving end here are commoners. They are ordinary people who are not necessarily responsible for the problems that are there in those local communities. I mean, the ordinary person who is barely trying to survive is not responsible for why there's no borehole. He's also at the receiving end, just like, the bandits. So, who is responsible for this? What role will politicians play in this regard?
A lot. Like I said, the basis of this, any insecurity problems you see are the basic bad governance and corruption. We saw poverty real, but we've never seen in our lives. Going to all these places, not only amongst the Fulanis, but among people. People drinking from polluted pond when all they need is a deep borehole. And the governor is renting flights every night flying to Abuja. So it's bad governance and corruption. These are simple things, simple. I'm from Katsina. A third of my state is under siege by these bandits. So I'm not talking abstract. I'm not talking from Lagos, Benin, or what. I'm talking from there. We have never seen IDPs before this government came. We have never seen this much pillaging before this government came. Cattle rustled, women raped, our villages ransacked, our capital city is filling up as an IDP camp. Our people are getting poorer by the day, and here we are, federal government is saying we are going to get 100 million people out of poverty in 10 years. Guess what? Hundreds of millions of people are going into poverty largely due to this. Farmers cannot go to farm because they've been scared of the land, or they've put levy on them before they access that. They control the rural areas. The honest truth, we do not have enough soldiers, we do not have enough policemen. And I've said it before, our people need to be protected. How do we do that? The alternative is we need to take a controlled way. Government needs to be serious to see how can we train our youth locally in a very controlled way. Train, arm them to protect their local communities. If we don't have police, if we don't have army. Giving all money to soldiers to throw bomb, to can a bomb, will not solve it. Will not.
So how would you react to Zamfara State Governor's statement about saying we need to take up arms to protect ourselves?
Is it Katsina or?
Yes.
Katsina?
Yes.
So this is the point I've been making. So when a governor from the state of the president is saying this, that just tells you, government, we are helpless. You are on your own. So it's a huge indictment on the government not able to protect. The primary responsibility, the primary constitutional responsibility of government is to secure and protect the welfare of the people, period. Anything else is just secondary. But that is the primary responsibility of government. Government has failed to secure its people. That's why government is saying, you're on your own, defend yourself. In the president's state. In the president's state. So we need to, Nigerians, pull back and say we're in real trouble. We need to sit down and find out the way to go by everybody getting involved. Banditry will be a lot more difficult than Boko Haram. Boko Haram is in one place. These bandits are all over the place. They are small. They are rugged. They are agile. They are in an environment they are comfortable with. Ask people that have been abducted, they drive them, they walk 9, 10 hours into the forest where no soldier has been, no soldier has ever been.
Okay, Prof. You know, another side of the argument is that some will say that, well, if you are talking about lack of social amenities or lack of infrastructure at the grassroots level, it's not limited to the northwestern part of the country. So why do we have this banditry, you know, using these things as cover?
Yeah, so
it's
very
whatever
easy.
atrocity is
Good,
being
so
committed.
it's very easy. You can ask Boko Haram. Ask Boko Haram, they will bring you scriptural basis for the nonsense they are doing. Ask ISIS. They will pull up the scriptural basis for cutting people. So every criminal has something to hide behind. These bandits are not in any way fighting for the Fulani. They're not. We went to Zamfara. Zamfara state is essentially a Fulani state. We've seen lawful herders all across. And amidst them you have a bunch of bandits that are terrorizing the whole land. Nobody's holding forth for them. We need to get them out, get them strategically, rehabilitate people and communities so that our people can go back to the farm. The way we're doing it is all wrong. There's a role for the military, but there is no military solution to banditry in Nigeria. Let nobody tell you differently. I have relatives that have served this military proudly, and we're very proud of what they do. And it's because they are in the front line that you and I can sit down here and criticize them. They're making it possible for us to do that, right? They're doing their best. But it is the political leadership that needs to give us direction where to go. This thing is going to be a prolonged war if we don't get it right. And General Buratai said it. This is going to last a long time because we're not doing it the right way. It's not a military problem, it's a social problem. The military needs to be involved. Traditional rulers, religious leaders, you, the media, academics, everybody needs to be involved. Stop everything. These guys have declared war on Nigeria for a very long time, while the government has allowed this to fester. Okay. Everything has gone out of control.
Okay. Are you of the opinion that the death of Al-Barnawi and Shekau will weaken them in any way?
Will weaken
the bandits?
Bandits?
Yes.
Shekau and bandits, they are different.
Yes.
So the Boko Haram guys
right.
and this bandits are different.
Yes, these are key.
Good. So you are saying, let's take an analogy that these guys out there in the northeast were killed and this guy should fret.
Yes.
Let us not forget. You remember Buhari Ndaji? Buhari Ndaji used to be the biggest terrorist in Zamfara then. And he was killed by who? By one of them. And now, he was killed by Dogo Gide. And who was taking over now? Buhari Ndaji's boys. Kachala Turiji. They are the ones terrorizing Zamfara now. So the killing of one, many more will come. And Kachala Turiji told us, oh, Buhari Ndaji was killed, but we're still here. So we need to be strategic in what we do, how we get to this problem. Banditry needs to end. Banditry is a problem to all of us. Banditry has made us poorer, has made us unsafe, has killed our people, raped our women, things we've never seen in this part of the country. Never.
All right, so Prof, we have a lot of information, I mean, at least from this interaction. It's obvious that our security forces are not in lack of information as per intelligence. Some of the names you mentioned here, you said, well, they should be taken out. Yeah, but why do you think it's kind of difficult to take them out? Is it that difficult to take them out?
So you see, we are the military. Our military is deployed in 34 out of 36 states in the country. The military in Nigeria is essentially doing a lot of policing work. There's no military in the world that can sustain this kind of stretching out. So you stretch them out and you expect them to do a lot more. To clean up somebody else's mess. The military did not create Boko Haram. They did not create bandits. They did not create IPOB or this thing. It is a political problem that the military is always called to clean up. And if they don't clean it up in time, we all blame the military, the military. It's not the military's role to go and find out what Dr. Murtala Rufai found out in his work in 10 years. But it's complementary. We've interacted with senior leadership of the military and the police and the DS as part of our visit. So nobody should be saying, I'm your enemy, I'm your... No. Intelligence agents, the military, the police, academics, people who have been there, clerics, we need to sit down together. No one person. The military will not solve this problem, clerics will not, traditional rulers will not, politicians will not. All come together and see how do we get this, how do we take care of this problem. We have done a lot. We've gone to 6 states, we have interacted with people. President Obasanjo has met all the leadership, and we presented with the academics, we are looking for solutions. The military is very important, part of this solution, but it's not the most important.
Okay, concluding thoughts, Prof. Are you of the opinion that perhaps we should declare a state of emergency on security and maybe we should see some kind of massive recruitment to complement what we have on ground at the moment?
Right. So declaring state of emergency or legal, all I'm interested in is how do you protect our people. And I've said it. You need to massively recruit our youth in affected areas that will protect our villages. Batsari, close to the forest. You give me 1,000 Batsari youths trained with AK-47, they'll go into the forest and flush them. And it's not something you're going to wait 6-9 months. No, we did it during the Civil War. Massive recruitment. After a year, you demobilize them. We don't have soldiers, we don't have police. We need to be honest with ourselves to protect our villages. The military will go there now in Zamfara, give temporary relief. These bandits will retreat deep into the forest or spill into the other states. They will come back and exert revenge on people. We need to protect our people, and the only way we can protect them is make sure we enroll, we recruit our youth that can protect. The civilian JTF in Borno are doing a good job protecting their people. So yes, banditry cannot be solved by military alone. They're a very vital part, but everybody needs to connect.
Okay. We'll have to stop there. We have been discussing government's efforts in fighting banditry, and we have been discussing this with Professor Usman Yusuf, member of the Sheikh Gumi intermediary team. Thank you so much for coming here.
Thank you.
We hope to have you next time.
You're welcome.
Okay. We're going to take a short break now. When we come back, the show continues. Stay with us.
Suleiman, Aya, and Tari, all from the Sulubawa clan, with a unique wealth of culture and deep love for cattle, which truly reflects their sense of family. But over time, everything changes, with no lands for grazing. Experience the incredible story of the Fulani people. Loved ones they must protect, the journey they must take.
African fabric is finding its way to the global stage. But Nigeria is losing out on big textile spenders as the local industry faces imminent extinction. Behind me is the Arewa textile mill, established in 1963 and eventually closed down in 2004. From over 180 textile mills in the 70s, only about 25 mills now operate at less than 40% capacity.
I'm an employee of Arewa Textile PLC before it closed. After a month, I was just like a madman.
In a day, a load of 4,500.
The once thriving sector struggles to compete with an annual import of $4 billion.
Smuggling is the order of the day. For manufacturers, we cannot compete.
We visit the nation's textile hubs to seek answers to why the sector has failed to return to its glory days despite government's intervention. Thank you for staying with us. This is Daybreak, reaching you from Trust Television from the nation's capital in Abuja. Now, President Muhammadu Buhari signed the Petroleum Industry Bill into law on the 16th of August this year. As part of the unbundling of the NNPC within 6 months of the passage of the PIA, the President has given directives for the incorporation of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation (NNPC) to a limited liability company with Senator Ifeanyi Ararome as chairman of its board, as provided for by Section 53, subsection 1 of the PIA. What does all this mean? The NNPC will now be run as purely commercial company. Payment of subsidy on petroleum products will therefore stop. The Nigerian oil industry will fully be deregulated and fuel price will be determined by market forces of demand and supply. Joining us now to discuss this is Dr. Tefa Abraham, an economist. Good morning, and it's good to have you join us.
Good morning. Welcome to the show. Thank you.
Yeah, sort of great news. I mean, we will say we are beginning to see the implementation of the Petroleum Industry Act, in the country. It means that no more government funding for the NNPC. One is curious, how will the NNPC now be run?
Well, the Petroleum Industry Act is a game changer for the petroleum sector of Nigeria, especially in breaking down the once big and untouchable oil sector into very clear fragments of upstream, midstream, and downstream that will point to investors where they can come into the investment space and take advantage of the PIA. So, but as it is, the NNPC still has a major role in the PIA. It's not as if the PIA takes away power from the NNPC. What happens is that it is now like a limited liability company. The government has large shares of control of the NNPC, but some parts can now be shared with the public. In other words, public can come in and own shares and become part of the ownership of the NNPC. So to some extent, it will still get some level of funding support from its public aspect because like a partnership now between the government and the people. So the government will still sustain the operation of the NNPC to some extent, while the other part of the funding comes from the people. But what will happen is that even though the PIA has been passed, and the issues of subsidies and petroleum prices will not end immediately. The Act provides that 6 months after the passage, all those structures should be put in place to ensure that the smooth transition of the NNPC into a commercial venture. So I'm sure it's not up to 6 months yet that the Act has been passed. So subsidy stock will still be going on. And even when it halts, it's like a pipe. When you close the pipe, it takes some time before the water stops. So the subsidy regime that the petroleum industry has been used to will still affect the operations of the oil sector. You'll still be hearing issue of subsidy, no subsidy, crude oil price, petroleum price, I beg your pardon, being subsidized or no subsidized, and the price going up or not going up. That is the adjustment that is expected to happen to prepare the NNPC into a market-running adventure that demand and supply takes its course and investors begin to benefit from the opening up of the system to wider public.
Okay. Now, among many other things, the Act is meant to establish an innovative mechanism to fund petroleum host communities directly through trust funds. How does this come to play?
Yeah, exactly. The way it works is that, don't forget, Nigeria is a federal state. It's important that Nigerians understand the type of federalism or presidential system that we are practicing. This Petroleum Industry Act, under its section of fiscal governance, still gives priority to federal government getting revenue from the petroleum industry. It does not end the federal government days of getting revenue from the petroleum industry. It still makes this revenue programming to the federal government a vital part. But it will now be managed in a sustainable manner to ensure that communities that this oil is coming from are not left out like it has always been. And that is where we all celebrate what President Muhammadu Buhari's administration and the 9th Assembly has done by the passage. In the past, there was no clear formula of what host communities get. Now it is clear that out of their total annual expenditure, operational expenditure, they get 3% of it, which according to the group managing director, if you've listened, has argued that 3% of the sum actually amounts to billions of dollars. So the idea now is that it is now recognized officially how the host communities will be addressed will be related, will be carried along in terms of the sharing of the fund. In the past, there was nothing like that. So we know that people are still debating the size and all that. But it's a big leap from this administration to now recognize that this will now happen. And don't forget, there are other aspects of operations that even the petroleum companies that are in these host communities carry out through corporate social responsibility, all these clean of communities, and many programs that we can't really itemize, from education to health to women empowerment, youth empowerment, and things like that. But in summary, this Petroleum Industry Act has now made it a part of its regulatory framework that host communities are part of the governance structure of the petroleum industry of the country.
Okay.
So how do you think that this will go a long way in terms of blocking some of the leakages and opportunities for corruption, like people have said in the NNPC before now and all of that? How is this PIA going to help in that regard?
First of all, it opens the system to public scrutiny. It increases transparency about the system, how the system operates, the system in this case NNPC and all those ventures around it. It is now clear that the operations will now be open. Then in the past, what the PIA has also done is that in the past we are used to hearing petroleum profit tax. That the process of collecting petroleum profit tax alone, it's something that has been shredded in a pool of no transparency. But this PIA now has even, in a way, ended the petroleum profit tax regime and substituted it with things like hydrocarbon tax, with and now there's also be room for like capital gains tax, payment of dividend, even education tax, and things like that. These are taxes that you can. It becomes clear that the revenue that is being derived from the petroleum industry, as you hear, education tax, is straight going for education. So in other words, in the past, unlike in the past where these taxes are collected and thrown in a pool, it is now clear what the taxes will be used for, like hydrocarbon tax. Ab initio is very clear what is meant for.
Like go to say Ministry of Education, or does it go to the federal government?
The aspect of education tax is the petroleum industry contribution to educational development. The hydrocarbon tax is the petroleum industry contribution to addressing gas flaring, all these kind of climate change issues and things like that. It's not just saying petroleum profit tax that goes back to the federation account. And don't forget, as a revenue generating entity that NNPC is, they deduct cost of operation, all these things. There's now a board. I said earlier that there's now upstream, downstream, and midstream. All of them have their own regulatory framework that's like a board that oversees what happens in these sectors. And it's made up of different people from the country, different players, stakeholders that covers every sector of the economy. So they will now be in a position to be scrutinizing the operations of everything that happens at the midstream, downstream, and upstream, unlike in the past where everything is just lumped onto the minister. The very first provision of the Petroleum Industry Act, Section 1 of it, provides that everything petroleum and all that is now owned by the federal, by the government of the federation, which is the Nigerian people. Before the PIA, all that ownership was saddled to like the minister or the NNPC or just a specific entity. But this Petroleum Industry Act gives power of the petroleum sector back to the people, and that's why there's room for people to come in through the limited liability concept, and then to ensure that the operations of NNPC becomes more open. So in summary, yes, it will reduce, in fact, it will wipe away corruption in the mid to long term. But that will only happen if all the procedures that the Act provides that 6 months from the passage, all those processes should be put in place. So the public stakeholders, civil society organizations, everybody should begin to engage to track the process of what is happening as we count down 6 months after the passage to ensure that all those parameters, all those structures are put in place. Otherwise, anything that goes on through that negotiation, the board of the midstream, upstream, downstream, or any sector may just have to do with it. So media engagement has to begin now that the processes are in place to count down towards 6 months post-passage of the PIA towards the full implementation of it.
Okay. I would like to go back to the earlier question I asked. Others have criticized the percentage allocated to host communities, saying that there should be an alternative source of funding. What are your thoughts about that?
The allocation to host communities, like you said, others are criticizing. Generally, it's painful to the host communities to see what drilling of oil over the years have done to the environment. It really hurts. It hurts the environment, the water, farmland, fishing, and things like that. Years and years, different administration will promise clean of Ogoniland, clean of this. You hear them fight with Shell, with this company, that company. Recently, there was even a case that was won, but that the court asked Shell to pay 40 billion to a host community. After how many years? 40 billion naira today is not 40 billion naira of before, if you want to adjust it for exchange rate differentials. So, first of all, oil revenue still comes from host communities. So recognizing first that these people, as part of our federal arrangement that we have for now, is that revenue collected from states are harmonized into the consolidated revenue account that goes into the federation account and shared across all tiers of government. So instead of just sharing blankly and using a blanket adjusted formula, it is now, this Petroleum Industry Act has added that 3% to host communities. So like I said, it's annoying to them that this thing is like that. But it's a step forward. That is the point. Now, in terms of the alternative funding sources, that alternative funding sources can only come from generally the concept or the perspective of diversifying our economy away to other things, especially taking advantage of the gas sector and other sectors. But for investors in these host communities, where they'll diversify to, it's even constrained because land and water resources have been affected by years of drilling. So cleaning up that environment and creating very digital smart infrastructure in those environments will really enable them to diversify their earnings and help them get additional funds. Then empowering young women, young youths generally on ICT, so that they can take advantage of the connected economy, the digital space, will also help people from that region get new sources of income and become new entrepreneurs in new aspects of life. But having said all this, the Petroleum Industry Act has done very well in taking a leap forward in adding additional source of revenue to the community so that they can expand their development. You can see already what's happening in NDDC and all that. The management and all that is I'm not sure it's bringing the inclusive development that the host community is expected. So this arrangement, so rather than talking about just alternative funds, how to manage the fund that goes to these communities now is even the big question that many people are not yet shining their torchlight on. If this 3% goes to the government or the local government, how will it be managed again? Hope youth will not be excluded again. Women, hope they will not be excluded again. So these are some of the issues. But in terms of additional funds, diversifying the economy is just the way out.
Okay. So, okay, let me take that. So should Nigeria prepare for a post-petroleum world?
A post-petroleum economy is almost here because what consumes petrol the most is vehicles. And already the world's below, the richest man in the world right now, Tesla, is already on electronic cars that are non-reliant on petrols. So very soon, because of the way our economies are connected, it will become more expensive to import cars that are dependent on petrol. Because except we want our country to become a dumping ground. Every country will just be pushing out cars that depend on petrol, pushing everything back. And then that will increase our carbon emission again and create a lot of problems. So in as much as we should be preparing for a post-petroleum economy, the mix for Nigeria should be one that has role for petroleum and for renewable, for fossil and non-fossil fuels in terms of engines and machines and things like that. So we should be looking forward to where maybe cars in Nigeria for now are still the ones that run on petrol, but the electricity is now hydro-reliant. Right. Generators are now maybe diesel-dependent. Cooking and the rest is now gas-dependent. So it must be a mix, because Nigeria cannot move straight from petrol to no petrol. It will be a transition. So that will take time. Already during the 8th Assembly, I think, there was even a bill for an act to ensure that Nigeria prepares. I think it was moved by, Ben Bruce, I think that when he was a senator there. But generally, the 8th Assembly. So the government already thinking towards a post-petroleum economy, but the transition for Nigeria will be gradual.
Right. Okay, Dr. Tefa. Now, should we be expecting an increase in oil revenue as a result of this new arrangement by the PA? How soon should we expect
the
that?
PIA opens up the sector for efficient operation. But in terms of oil revenue, it just depends on the interplay of global demand and supply forces in the world market. Petroleum prices are so sensitive that a shock from the Middle East, for instance, can just lead to an increase in crude oil price. A decision from OPEC can just affect crude oil price, things like that. So for now, and that's why the medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper of the federal government is always used to benchmark crude oil price, production, and exchange rate. So that benchmark of crude oil price we choose, it is the amount we can sell a barrel of oil and still have money to run our budget. But if there's a shock and it goes below that price, then there will be a wider concern of fiscal deficit. So for now, the Petroleum Industry Act only opens up the sector for efficient operation and for people to diversify the kind of investment that is inside the petroleum industry. But in terms of whether to lead to an increase in crude oil price, that would depend.
No, not crude oil price.
Revenue to the government. It will depend on the increase in crude oil price. Exactly. I think that's the link I'm trying to bring out. When crude oil price, and that, if you listen to what Honorable Minister for Culture and Information has been saying, Mr. Alhaji Lai Mohammed, he has been consistent to argue that when President Muhammadu Buhari's administration came into power, crude oil price declined from 2011 to like 2015. That there was a serious hike in global crude oil price, and that translated into more revenue for the federal government. But from 2015 till date, revenue from crude oil has been very difficult. In COVID period, it even went down to -20. So oil revenue from oil to the oil sector depends largely on crude oil price. On the one hand, on the other hand, the quantity.
But don't you see that by virtue of this PI, maybe there should be some kind of increase in the production level that we have, maybe production of barrels per day?
Increase in production level depends on peace in the Niger Delta and arrangements with host communities. And then if production increases and crude oil price at the global market is low, then there will be oversupply of crude. OPEC will not allow that, because their implication is that globally, Nigeria's contribution to OPEC production will add to supply glut, like a situation where there's oversupply, and that will push down global price of crude oil. So that is the economics of it. It comes from the crude oil price. So what OPEC does is to ensure that no OPEC member country is overproducing, so that they will try to keep the price in a manner that we guarantee more revenue to the countries that are in the oil-producing, oil-exporting countries, OPEC bloc. So that's the concept. So just to put a nip on that, the PIA will open the sector for efficient operation, attract investors. So you see, aside the crude that we are used to, there will be improvement in other petrochemical derivative investment. There will be other investment that will happen that will make our domestic economy to be even more vibrant. So that's aside relying on sale of crude oil, which is something that will also come up as a result of the PIA. But I'm saying that the revenue from it will depend on interplay in global forces. But that aside, domestically, you will see more people producing plastics from new industries that this PIA will motivate. You see new investors coming up to convert petrol to other useful sources or other things that can be used in the home and in the commercial space that will create jobs for Nigerians. But overall, fiscal programming is still very important to ensure that whatever happens to crude oil price in the international market does not hurt us negatively.
Right.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Tafa Abraham.
Thanks. It's great having you on the show.
For coming on the show. Yes, we've been speaking with Dr. Tafa Abraham, an economist, and we've been basically talking about the new arrangement of the NNPC being a company now, by virtue of the Petroleum Industry Act. With that, we've come to the end of Daybreak for today. Do well to join us. In case you've missed, you can catch up on our social media handles and also join us tomorrow for another edition of the program. My name is Ayuba Ilya.
And I'm Zainab Bala. See you tomorrow.
Thank you for watching.
should have been put into it.